Okay, so this last video is just going to talk about relating confidence intervals to hypothesis tests. So the first thing we're going to talk about is that confidence intervals and hypothesis tests are built from the same calculations. Okay, so that's the first thing, and that's important to know. They're built from the same calculations. And then one thing also, notice that they have the same assumptions and the same conditions. Now, one thing you may not know is that you can approximate a hypothesis test by examining the confidence interval. So if they give you a claim, you can see whether or not it falls between a confidence interval with the hypothesis test to see whether you might reject or fail. And to do that, you would just ask whether, like I said, the null hypothesis value is consistent with the confidence interval for the parameter at the corresponding confidence level. Okay, that is how those things relate. Okay, now, because confidence intervals are two-sided, they correspond to two-sided tests. So a 90% confidence interval would correspond to a hypothesis test that is two-sided with a significance level of 10%, whereas a 95% confidence interval would correspond to a two-sided test. Remember, two-sided tests are equal to, not equal to, with the significance level of alpha equals 0.05. So in general, how you can interpret this is a confidence level or confidence interval with a confidence level of C% that corresponds to a two-sided hypothesis test. You would just pretty much take the 100 minus the percent, like I did. 90% confidence interval goes with the significance level of 10%. Now, the relationship between confidence intervals and one-sided hypothesis test is a little more complicated. Okay, just a little more than what we were talking about. For that, what you're going to have to do is subtract the two. So a confidence interval with a confidence level of C%. What you're going to do is take 100 minus that and take half of that. So if it was 90%, you take 100 minus the 90%, and then you would take half of that. So a 90% confidence interval would correspond to a one-sided test. One-sided test would be when the alternative is less than or greater than. That would correspond to a test with only a 5% if it is one-sided.